Hey, what's good, fam? Reverend T, aka Reverend Miss T, PhD, aka Reverend Tawana in the building. Yes, I am. Let me start this again. Something's going on with my. Hey, what's going on, fam? It's Rev T in the building. Join us if you can for our Tuesdays with Tawana Facebook Live every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. I am your host and your curator, Rev T, Rev Miss T, Dr. Tad, Tawana in the building. Yeah, I'm here. I'm excited, happy to be here. For those of you who are just joining, good morning, Doc. Good to see you this morning. Yes. For those who are just joining, we do this as a Facebook Live to invite an engaging conversation with community, because this is all about building community, one episode at a time. And then we turn this into a podcast so that people can listen to it. If you work in the office now and you're on your way home, you can listen to it as a podcast or while you're making dinner or doing whatever. So you have plenty of opportunities to experience this community building experience. So it's not just about me. I'm the host and curator, but I am because you are. I can't do this without you. So I invite you into this space. You may hear me shout out some folk. That's the folk that's commenting on the Facebook Live. I love to insert other people's comments and presence into this narrative as we move forward on today's topic. How do we get people through the door and in the room? It's a loaded question. Is not meant to be rhetorical. Been reflecting on it since my dissertation defense. How do we get you through the door and in the room? So not only how do we get you through the door into spaces and places that aren't normally welcoming to us or don't necessarily invite us, right? But once we get through the door, what happens when we are in the room, and how do we stay in the room, and how do we stay engaged in the room? And I want to particularly focus on my Black beloveds, because there are so many times and places and spaces where we won't even go into the room. We won't even go through the door due to fear or imposter syndrome or self-doubt or not thinking about community or overthinking community. What will they say? How will they respond if I'm in the room? So I'm hoping that we can have a dialogue about this, because I truly believe, and this is Tawana in my reflection time, just thinking, I truly believe that people are dying due to these silenced voices, or due to the unheard, or due to those who, for whatever reason, are afraid to speak up and speak out against a myriad of injustices. The injustices that we face day in and day out is not only at the hands of law enforcement, but it's in healthcare, it's in our educational system, it is in our communities, it's in the situation of class, whether you're lower, middle, upper, whether you're owning class, whatever it is, it's all made to separate and demean us. And I want us to begin to think differently so that we can feel differently, and with both do differently, and do it in community where we don't feel like we are alone. As many of you know, I just reached a huge milestone in the cancer survival world. I just reached my 5-year milestone, 5 years of surviving HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer, and I am still surviving because I'm still in active treatment for metastatic disease. And many people did not make it to this point. Other people are unable to do what I do, if you will. And, comparison is from the depths of hell. Comparison is the worst thing that we can do when we're talking about our journeys and talking about our experiences, because oftentimes it may diminish our own experiences because we're so busy comparing our experiences to someone else. My experience, the harrowing experience that it was, will look different for someone else who is surviving cancer, surviving any other debilitating diseases that require some sort of maintenance. It all looks different, right? But even with those differences, even with different experiences, and different support systems and the sizes of our support systems and the language that we have, how do we garner up and muster up the courage to go through the door and to go into the room and stay in the room so that our voices are heard, so that our presence is felt? Because I say this often during this broadcast, we are divine. We have the power to shift the atmosphere. We walk into a space and the atmosphere shifts. Our words tend to be very transforming, can be very transforming and liberating if we only knew how powerful we were and how powerful we are. So it's so important to think about what happens, going through the door and sitting in the room and actually speaking up and speaking out and speaking for ourselves. So let me back up for a minute. So there was a situation where, hey, Miss Odessa, good to see you. Glad you could join us. I was in my reflection time. I was thinking about how, we can't pour from an empty cup, right? It's very difficult to love someone else if you don't have love, unconditional, positive regard for self. It's very difficult to honor someone else when one doesn't honor the divine in themselves. That's the whole Ubuntu concept. I am because you are. Or when I say namaste, it's the divine in me honoring the divine in you. Or in Christian traditional scriptures, when it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't forget about self. So how do we get to a place and space where we are honoring ourselves and loving ourselves, and then, beloved, being able to put that into a language? Because sometimes, I don't know if you saw the Colin Kaepernick Black and White docuseries, but there was at one point in one of the episodes where Colin felt stuck because he didn't have the language to respond to the microaggression, the dehumanization, the disrespect that was happening in that moment. And he didn't have the language to push back or to fight back or to respond. And so in community, we're able to build that language. Only in community. If we don't do it in community, it's hard for us to build this language that's universal for us, that's liberating for us, that's empowering for us. It's one thing for me to have a language. For instance, when I wrote my dissertation, yes, my dissertation is scholarly. It took hours and hours and hours of research. I saw a post that said you read like 23 articles and read for like 4 days to come up with 2 sentences of a reference, right? So I wrote this dissertation and did all of the research and the interviews and the coding and the data analysis and so on and so forth. But when it came to writing the dissertation, I had to be very mindful of the wide variety of people that may download this dissertation and read this dissertation. And I wanted it to be received in a way where people weren't confused or looking at this dissertation like, I don't understand a word this person is saying. So I had to find this middle ground where it was academic and yet academic enough to be transforming and liberating for the average layperson, if you will, the average beloved out there, because it was more important for me to get the message out, to do the healing work necessary as a womanist, than it was to think more highly of myself and document how smart I am or use words to show how brilliant I am. It's so much more than that. Hey, Mama Lovey, good to see you. So it's so much more than that. And there are times when we have to we have an opportunity to take a step back and to realize our surroundings, realize our audience, and then meet that audience where they are, so that we can use a language that we both can understand and we can have this reciprocal dialogue. It's not about me, as the curator of this moment. It is about building community. I thank people all the time for joining, because time is valuable. Time is so precious, and the fact that you take time out of your day every Tuesday to spend 30 minutes with me means the world to me. It means even more when you place something in the comments, or even if you don't place anything in the comments and you just chill and sit back and watch, but you are learning and processing and maybe taking something from this so that you can enhance your language and enhance your prowess and enhance your community to do better for one another and to do better as a collective, right? So when we talk about how do we get through the door, let me give you some background on why I chose this question, if you will, and not a rhetorical question, an actual question. So I was listening to a sermon. I don't even remember who it was, and it's probably irrelevant. But I was listening to a sermon, and at the beginning of the sermon, the person was saying, you ought to be glad because and we're some are in person and some are virtual, right? Just to paint the picture, I'm a preacher. So the preacher says, you ought to be glad because the Lord woke you up this morning, put food on your table, you got clothes on your back. And that's a huge assumption, because there are some people. Hey, Ty. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, Ty. There are some people that's a big assumption, because there are some people who actually experience worship looking for a semblance of hope because they did not have food on their table that morning and still got up to experience worship. Or they don't have clean clothes because they don't have a washer and dryer and they can't afford to go to the laundromat. Or they woke up not feeling well and not feeling loved and not feeling, a multitude of ways, right? So sometimes we make these assumptions. And it can be quite hurtful and discouraging, right? So I was thinking about, how do we get our beloveds who are struggling through the door and into the room for healing? Let me give you another example. In Black culture, at least in my experience, I remember when we wouldn't even say the word cancer. We would say the C word. You couldn't even say cancer, because cancer equaled death. Because unfortunately, hey, Miss Monica, my beautiful sister, cancer equals death, or equaled death, because we didn't have adequate health care. We weren't diagnosed in time. The fear of going to the doctor. I remember my grandmother telling me, I will never let them cut me open because they'll just let the air in and then all the cancer will just take over my body. These are beliefs, inherent beliefs that they believed and passed along down through the generations. So now we have an opportunity to muster up or create a space for courage for people to walk through the door and enter into the room for healing, transformation, liberation, courage, hope, grace, peace, mercy, provision, all of that, without having that fear or those preconceived notions or those limiting beliefs that teach us otherwise. Right? So when I talk about going through the door and getting into the room, it's really breaking down these barriers that are stopping us from being great. that's hindering us from being community. Like, we don't have to wait. Womanism is about not waiting for someone else to grant us liberation. Right? We are able and capable to find it ourselves. Monica said, "Oh my, that's what a friend my age said. Don't let that air and your and our age, Monica, our age, right? Whoa, we need all of that, as you said, because we have these beliefs, and it's scary. So, and many of you, you've been on this broadcast. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and the one thing that I often say is, I fear is a defense mechanism for me, and I interpret the sacred text, Christian sacred text in First Timothy, where God is telling Timothy, well, it's said that God did not give us a spirit of fear. I don't interpret that as to mean we don't have fear. I think it's that fear that should not overcome us and keep us stuck. It's the fear that should propel us forward to get out of that fearful situation into a semblance of peace, into a semblance of healing, into a semblance of hope, into a semblance of joy, into a semblance of forward movement, into a semblance of progression. So it's not letting that fear or that limiting belief take over our mind, body, and spirit, but we use that and learn from it, and then we are able to move forward in that, so that we ourselves individually and we collectively can then be co-creators in this healing process. We can be co-creators in building schools for our Black beloveds. We can become co-creators to build worship institutions that aren't toxic or aren't dangerous to us or aren't hurtful or aren't full of misogynoir or patriarchy or power hoarding or power hungry. We can start to co-create these things because now we know that we can do differently. And when we do differently, we do better. And when we do better, it works out for all of us. So how do we get to the door, through the door, and in the room? Let me shift gears with another example. During my dissertation, one of my committee members said, "Well, Tawana, you know, how do we get this to the masses, right? This is great work. How do we, get it out there?" And I gave somewhat of an answer, and then at the end I said, can I say I don't know? Because I don't know what makes the white people that come to Facing Racism, through Soul to Soul Sisters and the Facing Racism program, I don't know how they get to the door. I don't know if it's something that, a relationship with myself or my co-founder or any of the other staff and contractors with Soul to Soul. I don't know if they heard from a dear friend that they trust that you need to go to this experience. And I don't know. But there are some people that I know that would not dare come into the room. They'll come in defensive, and they will remain defensive and not receive the revolutionary love that we are trying to give, and to remind folk that we are going to dismantle white privilege and white power and white supremacy. And believe it or not, there's enough divine power to go around. There's enough resources to go around. There's enough resources if you just not take a flight to space and feed the hungry and supply adequate housing and do training and development for those who have been unhoused for so long. How do they then become reacclimated to a world where they actually have something to protect them and keep them? They have a heated apartment. They know how to cook food. They know how to shop for food, when for so many years. So it's not just about feeding someone a sandwich. It's teaching someone how to buy the bread, buy the lunch meat or peanut butter and jelly or whatever it is, and then having the job to buy the meat and the mayonnaise or mustard and whatever. So it's so much more than that. So getting people to the door is one thing, but getting people in the room and building community is another. And these stages and these phases come with love and community. That's the bottom line. They come with love and community. So when we talk about this stimulus package and oh no, not the stimulus, the infrastructure bill that just passed. I don't know the full details of it. I'm not sure if paid leave, maternal paid leave was approved. I don't know if early childhood costs was included in the bill. I know that outside of that bill, our voting rights are still being challenged, and all of this stuff is happening while many of us sit on the sidelines as this is going on, forgetting how powerful we are and how powerful the voices that we have collectively, how powerful we are, and how we can truly make change. I know we have dealt with so many years of marginalization and historical oppression that is still rearing its ugly head today. I would love the freedom to not have to worry about my son or daughter getting home safely. I would love the freedom for us to walk, talk, breathe, jog, shop, drive, visit a family member, play basketball, buy Arizona and Skittle. I would love for us to have the freedom to do that. And unfortunately, those with power don't want to give up that power because it's a false sense of power that they built on with their own resources, not even considering someone else's. So it doesn't surprise me that certain parts of the infrastructure bill was not included because people in the 1% don't have to worry about childcare. They don't have to worry about public education. They don't have to worry about health care. They don't have to worry about beautiful migrants and immigrants that come. They don't have to worry about any of that because they live in this isolation, and so they don't worry about it because they don't want to. So how do we get them to open their eyes and to come into a room and to sit in a 7-week session called Facing Racism? I don't know. How do we prick their hearts and their minds and their souls when they think very intellectually and very individually? I don't know. But I know for my Black and brown beloveds, or even my Black indigenous people of color, I know that we must do differently. I know we must walk through the room in brazen fashion like never before and begin to make change like Cori Bush, one of the representatives, or like Omar and Ocasio, and the list goes on and on and on. And to be that voice, and then having the people galvanize behind those voices that are truly, truly, truly trying to transform what's happening. So let me bring it back down to us as we begin to close. So, we're still living with these limiting beliefs and these preconceived notions and other things that were taught to us prior, cancer, don't say the cancer word, say the C word. Yes, we are still dying disproportionately, particularly with breast cancer. We're at a 40% mortality rate as compared to white women, but yet the overall diagnosis of breast cancer has decreased. The math doesn't make sense. So you'll have those who will advocate for breast cancer or prostate cancer or ovarian cancer. You have those who will advocate and bring awareness to domestic violence. You'll have those who will advocate for, kidney health and diabetes. So we find our place and our call, and we begin to advocate, and we begin to galvanize folk who can then get the word out, and who are then sitting at these tables and in the room already, and giving them the language to fight back, giving them the language to push back, giving folk the language where people will sit there like, I can't compete with that. I can't disagree, because it's the unadulterated truth that we live in America, that we need to dismantle all things because the Declaration of Independence is not for us, or the Bill of Rights was not designed with us in mind, or the police department was not designed with serving and protecting us. So if we start to chip away at all of this, and then recognize our power and come together to then build egalitarian systems and just systems and systems that will humanize us and systems that will love us and systems that will protect us and systems that will keep us together and put us in a space of equity, not equality, but equity, where it is happening and available for all. Whatever position, space, place you are in, beloved, I encourage you today. I made it to 5 years of survivorship because of my village, because of my tribe, because of prayer warriors, because of beautiful doctors. Not everybody has beautiful doctors. My doctors were not perfect. Please know that. But I also had advocates in my corner who were able to push back, and they had the language and they had the experience when I didn't. And they stood in my stead and stood there and protected me by speaking for me because I didn't have the language to push back, to advocate for myself. So I encourage you today. You may not want to be in the forefront, leading your own organization out there. You don't have to be. Everyone has their calling to do something and to be something to make our communities greater and better. And finally, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Mother Carolyn said this several weeks ago. Living in an impoverished community, food desert, poor schools, lack of health care. How am I supposed to know that there is something on the other side of that if I don't have somebody coming in through the door and sitting in my community and teaching my community that there is so much greater out there? Not greater in a monetary way or a capitalistic way or individualistic way, but I'm talking about there's something better and greater for you, for your mind, your body, and your soul. You do not have to live this way because we live in one of the richest countries in this world, and you don't have to live this way. We don't have to keep the poor poor in order for the rich to be rich. We can then share our resources, and we can all then come to a place where we have wages that we can actually live on. Some people aren't going back to work because it's easier not to go back to work or less expensive to stay home and take care of their child than to go to a job that pays $12 to $15 an hour, and you still got to get to the work. So you got to put gas in your car. You got to pay insurance for your car, and then you get to work and you work these long hours. So you got to find childcare, not only before care and then school and then aftercare, because this job you got to work these long. You feel me? So it's a matter of when we walk in the door in our communities, because they are all our communities, whether you are of a renting class, owning class, lower class, middle class, all of those classes are human-made, man-made, designed to label us and to keep us in this box. And now it's time for us to step through, get out of the box, walk through the door, step into the room, and use your voice as the powerful, beautiful, divine person that you are. If you don't walk away with anything else, please know that. Speak up and speak out against injustices in your own way. In your own way. My way is not your way, but you know what? It's like puzzle pieces. They'll all fit together and build a beautiful puzzle or a beautiful mosaic. Miss Frida Phillips, happy belated birthday. I love you. I love you. I love you. And miss you so much, Miss Frida. Hey, Tamika, don't worry. It's okay. I know you're working hard. So listen, this is my time. I'm glad that you joined. I'm glad that you rocked with me for this 30 minutes together. And I hope that you will walk away and know that you are divine and that your voice means the world to me. And for you to use your voice and your agency and your sphere of influence to help somebody else. And I don't say that so that these things can come back to you, but they will come back to you, right? It's this circle of life. You reap what you sow. I I hope that you will walk away with this knowing that you can help somebody today, and then somebody will help somebody. And guess what? Before you know it, we have built a community, and we have built schools, and we've made sure that we don't live in food deserts, and we have put together programs and stuff to fully serve the houseless, to fully serve those who are in domestic violence. And yeah, I want to leave you with this. I'm sorry, especially for those, particularly, excuse me, for those in domestic violence situations or even coming out of a domestic violence situation. It is so hard to walk through the door, meaning to walk away and to walk through a door and to be free when you've been in bondage and you've been in this heinous relationship for so long. So we got to be the examples, beloved, out loud so that somebody can catch a glimpse of what they can be and the healing that they can experience and the safety. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those basic needs, just show them that they can be met and they don't have to live in harrowing situations. So if you do find yourself in a domestic violence situation, call 1-800-799-SAFE, or you can go online to the hotline either .com or .org and get more information. But please be safe. First and foremost, get a plan, get an exit plan, and know that you will be covered and cared for by your village and by your tribe. I love y'all. I love y'all for rocking with me. Thank you for being with me today. Be reminded you are beautiful, you are wonderful, you are powerful, you are divine, and we are co-creators in this thing, and we cannot and will not do this transformation and this liberation work on our own. We're all in it together. I love y'all. Peace out. I'm out. See you next Tuesday.